Hey everyone, Card Cafe here, and I'm here with a deck profile to talk about the robot boy himself, Avantgarda. This deck just got so much more expensive thanks to those set 13 reveals, which we'll certainly be talking about when the time comes. But for now, we're focusing on the set 10 build. So, start off with the main wide line here for our boy. So first off, you've got your generic starter that just says when you go second, right on him you get to draw a card. Same as all the other ones, but in this deck, very important that he stays in the soul, and we'll go over why. The next one up, so the grade 1 order says if you have this in your soul, and when he is ruled upon by the grade 2, you get to search your deck for a grade 1 strategy card, which we'll go over in a second. You reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your deck. And then importantly, if you did not find the grade 1 strategy, you get to call him to rearguard. So even if you don't find the search, you get to plus a body to the board, which sometimes can be pretty helpful. Next, the grade 2, very similar. If you are ridden on him by a grade 3 with Avantgarda in its name, and again, you still have to have this in the soul, you get to search for a grade 2 strategy card, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck, and then same thing as the grade 1. If you didn't find a grade 2 strategy, you get to call them to the board. I find more often, if I'm going to do that call skill, we do it with this one for the grade 2 body, more than we do for this. But then, really, the main card here himself, Mr. Avantgarda, got a couple skills to go over here. The first is, again, if we have the grade 0 in the soul, we can put a strategy card from our order zone, put it into the soul, and you get to draw a card. Then he gets the skill. He also gets 5k. He gets the skill then, though, that at the end of the battle that he attacks, if it hit, or, very important, or if you persona road, you get to counter +1, discard a card from your hand, stand him, and he gets a -1 drive. So it's a restanding Vanguard deck, and he gets, and once you're persona riding, your opponent cannot stop you from doing it. So it's a very aggressive, very helmet, rush in, do as much damage to your opponent as you can with a restanding Vanguard. Lots of crits, lots of power to the front row, which we will go over when we get to it. But a pretty straightforward red line when you get down to it. You're just searching for strategy cards, putting them into your hand, and then playing them for your Avantgarda. So for a grade 3 lineup, we are doing just what you would expect. We are running the 3 additional copies of Avantgarda. Then we are also running the Gratias Gridale. Now, for those who don't know, this just says it's a normal order. Play if you have a grade 3 Vanguard with Persona Ride, but if you did not ride that turn, you get to activate Persona Ride. So just another copy of Persona Ride in your deck, and because Persona Riding is so important for the restand skill, you gotta make sure you're running as many as possible. So you run the 3 extra copies of Avantgarde along with the Grail for short. Now, for the main thing with this deck, the strategy cards, or this set orders for this Brandgate deck. So we are running 1 copy of the Disruption strategy, Kill Shroud. What Kill Shroud says is that when you put it into the soul from the order zone with Avantgarda's effect, you get to retire any of your opponent's rearguard, which is great, and then also your Vanguard gets 5,000 power. So you get to retire an opponent's rearguard, and then Avantgarda gets a total of 10,000 power between this skill and Avantgarda. When I first put the deck together, I didn't think we were going to be using this as much as I have been, but I actually use this a lot. Just because there's a lot of pesky rearguards you want to get rid of, and just a lot of the times it makes the most sense for the early game for the first turn. Usually a lot of the times I actually do go into this. But then next we are running 2 copies of Bomber Strategy Dusting. Now we're running 2 copies of this because I'm incredibly unlucky. If you've seen any of the matches that I've played with Avantgarda, I'm almost always either drawing this or it's hitting the damage. So I run 2. If you want to run just 1 for a little bit more space in the deck, definitely feel free if you're luckier than I am, but I'm running 2 because I always lose 1, and I want to make sure I am searching it off of the grade 2 ride line. So you run 2 of it, and its skill is when it's put into the soul from the order zone, the Vanguard gets 10,000 power, and more importantly, your opponent cannot intercept, and they cannot use blitz orders to guard for the whole turn, not just for the Vanguard attack. So that's very important, especially in certain matchups where they have really good intercepting rear guards like Ava or Nirvana. Great to just shut those off. And then the Vanguard also gets 10k, which is great for just powering up since he's a restanding Vanguard. And then finally with the blitz orders, really just one very important one. You all know what it is. The perfect guard, Sanctitude, means they can't use it, which is great. So 2 copies, definitely use it a good amount of times. In the mid to early game, I would say, is when we use him the most. And then finally, for the strategy cards, we are running 2 copies of Shock Strategy Death Winds. So this one, grade 3 set order, when it's put into the soul, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, I choose one of my Vanguards, so Avantgarda, and it gets the red text skill. Whenever that unit attacks, not once per turn, the whole front row gets 5,000 power. So this is really good for finishing the game. Opponents at like 4 and 5 damage, go into this, your front row is going to get an additional 10,000 power, assuming you Persona Road, assuming your Vanguard is attacking twice, which it should be at that point. And so if you Persona Road, that's 20k extra to your front row. Great finisher, main way to just finish off the games. We run 2 copies of it to make sure we see it. And then that's not actually the only set order we run in this deck. I am actually running 2 Establishment deck, or dock. So this card is interesting. An interesting tech. You'll understand why we're running this once we get to the grade 2 lineup. This just says you set it by counterblasting 1, you get to draw a card. But the more important skill is that when it's in the order zone, all of your grade 2 rear guards can boost. Now this makes numbers really good in this deck because we're mostly running grade 2s, a lot of which get extra power. So if they can boost, we're just hitting lines that are automatically on a Persona right turn, hitting from like 35 to 40k. A lot of pressure. So we really like just having the grade 2 boost, and because of a certain card we will get to, it'll make sense why we get to use that and still set strategy orders in the same turn. Speaking of the grade 2 lineup, let's just go ahead and talk about the boy. So we are running 3 copies of Habitable Zone. Now, this is the generic cycler for Brandgate from set 10. I like this card a lot. Honestly, having played this deck a lot now, I think I am probably going to go up to 4 copies of it. I was hoping I could get away with 3, but the problem is you really want to see him in the early game for his first skill, which is when you discard him for your Ride Land effect, you can Soul Blast 1, put him in the bottom deck, draw a card. So really good for just getting some early advantage and using the Soul, provided you're not Soul Blasting the starter. Just get that, and then the second skill though, and the other reason why I think we're going to 4, because you also need to make sure you see him on the Persona right turn, is that he's on place if you Persona Road, Counterblast 1, search your deck for any set order, it can be the strategies or a flagship deck, add it to your hand, and then for the turn, you can set 2 orders instead of 1. So this is where you get the combos of, you can search out Refurbishment Dock, add it to your hand, set it, draw another card, but then still also be able to set something like Death Winds and use it in the same turn, which is very important for that pressure we were talking about before. So he nails that combo, and I think why, again, I'm probably going up to 4, but for right now, he's 3, and we do still see him a fair amount. So if you want to stick to 3, certainly not necessarily a bad idea, but I think just with how important he ends up being in this deck, we do probably want to go to 4. 3 for now, though. The card we are running at 4 in the grade 2 lineup is Enlightened Age Dragon. Still 4 copies until we get the promo for Avantgarda that we still don't have and got confirmation for yet. It's so sad. But for now, we're running this instead. So, what Enlightened Age Dragon does and why it's 4 up in this deck is, if you Persona Road this turn, Axe skill, you can Soul Blast 1. discard a card from your hand. He gets 5,000 power from the turn, so he's one of those cards that's getting extra power in the deck. But then also, more importantly, I can choose any set order from my drop zone, put it into my hand, and if I chose one, I can then choose a different one and add that into my hand as well. So this is how you basically are recycling your set orders and your strategy cards back. You Soul Blast them out, discard a card, usually an extra strategy, and then just add them both back to your hand. And just keep setting them, keep Soul Blasting them out, rinse and repeat. Excellent card for this deck. Why it's a 4 of, you definitely need to see this. This is how we keep recouping strategies and keep the strategy going with this deck. So 4 of 100%. Great card. Next, we're running 2 copies of Freiheit, Operation Master Freiheit. Now, his second skill doesn't matter in this deck. It is locked to the CEO Operation deck. Does not matter. We are running this purely for the first skill. And the first skill says, you can place him on rear guard. If you have an order, so if your order zone has a set order, counter blast 1, discard a card. Search your deck for 1 card with the same name as your Vanguard or product. That part doesn't matter. Reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck. Now, as you can tell with this deck, as I've said before, persona writing, name of the game. You gotta keep persona writing. This helps you get there because you can just counter blast 1, throw this down in your first grade 3 turn, and just automatically search out a copy of Avantgarda. Whole reason we run them. Now, I know some people run this at more copies. I was running this at 3, but honestly, with the amount of plussing this deck can do sometimes, and I personally just have never had an issue seeing the persona writings. Half the time, these just feel like a dead card in my hand. A lot of times I just don't even end up activating this because I don't need it because I just have a lot of my persona rights already in my hand. So some of the people I've seen who are just cutting this completely, I don't necessarily disagree with them. I've certainly considered it, but for right now, we're gonna run them at 2 copies still, just for that extra search, make sure we have the persona ride. But he's on the watch list, might be coming out. And lastly is the flex spot for the grade 2s. There's definitely a couple different things you could run here. I personally really like the blue Death Star Rick-Rahir. That's definitely not how you pronounce that. That's just my best guess because I don't speak German. So that's what we're gonna go with. But this skill is pretty simple. Just during your turn, continuous, you got a Vanguard with Avantgarda in this name, he gets 5k. And then, if you put a strategy from your order zone to the soul, he gets an additional 5,000 power. So this is just a good beater. He's just a free 20k beater or booster if you have the dock set up to be able to just bash your opponent. So he's just a really good card to have on the board. Apply more of that good pressure. So that's why I like him over some other cards that you could run. You can run more cards that are like searching orders, but honestly, I don't think you need them in this deck. I think it has plenty, and what we do need is more pressure. Now for the grade 1s, pretty straightforward stuff. We are running the real MVP of the deck, honestly. The only other real 4 of the rear guards is Blue Death Star, Haneda, Hathaway. This card is so good. Really just made the deck so much better. This card has 2 effects. The first is, when it's placed on rear guard, if you have a blue Death Star card, you can counterblast 1, draw a card. Super good. Play this at any point in the game, early game, mid game, late game. You're always going to have a blue Death Star Vanguard. You just throw down, counterblast 1, draw yourself a card. Fantastic skill. Really 10 out of 10 just for that. But where this card really shines is the second skill, which is when he boosts, if you have a strategy card in your order zone, or more specifically, if you place a strategy card in your order zone this turn, he gets 2,000 power. So he is a 10k booster, which is always great. But if he's in the center back row column, he counter charges, which is huge. This deck really needed some sort of counter charge to make Avantgarda free. So you just have him in your center back row with Avantgarda. Avantgarda attacks, counter charge 1, and then you can just counter blast, or you counter blast for his skill first, then boost, make it free. Just a super, super good card. Run 4 of it. It's probably going to be a 4 of until the end of time in this deck. Don't really need much more to say. Fantastic grade 1. great addition to the deck. And then honestly, the only other grade ones we're running are the perfect cards. So we're running 3 copies of the Nation Perfect Guard and then 1 Sanctitude. So pretty straightforward here, not much to say. The Nation Perfect Cards are able to perfect guard if you have one less card in your hand without discarding, which we really love that skill. And then Sanctitude, I'm sure as most of you know by this point, can be a perfect guard against triple drive, the text, not +1 drive, and you don't have to discard, but then also is a blitz order, so it gets around certain guard restricts that require you to guard 2 to guard from hand. Since this is not going from hand to order, or from hand to guard zone, it goes to the order zone, therefore it gets around those guard restricts. So, great card. 4 of those perfect guards. Pretty straightforward. Now for the trigger lineup. Because we are a restanding Vanguard deck, we are running 8 critical triggers. So you'll notice I'm not running any of the effect critical trigger, the one that goes to soul, gets something 2k. Not really necessary in this deck. The 2k isn't doing anything for you, and the go to soul also not doing anything for you. This deck generates enough soul without it, so rather just have the 5k body and just run 8, because you are a restanding Vanguard and we want to hit the crits because we want to kill them. So with that, now the big question, fronts or draws for the other 3 slots. I personally am doing fronts. So we're running the effect front here because you're going to run fronts. Obviously you're going to run the 20k front. You could run draws if you want to. I definitely could see an argument for the draws. I personally just feel like the fronts just add that much more pressure, another 10k to your front row. Drawing is, you have some draw power. It's not the most draw power. I'll certainly concede. So I can see the argument for draws. But honestly, really the big thing here for me personally was the 20k shield. The 20k shield just right now in the meta with so many decks just getting so much power, the 20k shield just helps keep you alive and in the game. So I really like the 20k shield versus the 10k, and again, just add that aggression, really trying to just kill our opponent as quickly as we can in this deck. So we're running the 3 fronts. And then for the heal lineup, another big question mark. We are doing 2 generic heals for the 15k shield, but then we are running 2 of the effect heal specifically for the critical trigger. So for people who don't know, this is the heal trigger that says if your opponent has a unit attacking that is 2 crits or greater, not from a critical trigger, but from the actual skill of the card, this adds 15,000 shield, so it's a 25k shield against something with an inherent extra crit. So this is a meta call, short and simple. There's so many decks in the meta right now, Gandiva, Ava, Messiah, Jejuled, they're just gaining inherent critical triggers. So I really want to have a heal trigger that can counter that and get me extra shield to get out of those sticky situations. Like I said though, meta call, as the meta evolves, we get new decks, set 11 and 12, I can certainly see changing this, running maybe the restand heal or the great heal, especially once we have more of the stride decks coming out later in the year. So definitely opt to change later, but for right now, I think this is the best way to go with the current meta. And last but certainly not least, of course, the one, the only Elder Breath over trigger for Brant Gate. I'm sure you all know what this does. It is the notorious one, definitely the best over trigger in the game right now. Short and simple, when you drive check it, double the power, double the crit of all your front row units. You check this, the game's over. I don't think I've ever seen anyone survive a Brant Gate OT turn. If you have, tell me about it. I'd love to hear how you survived the Brant Gate over trigger turn. That wasn't just like the first turn that they swung, but an actual grade 3 turn. If you are on Avantgarda, you check this, that's game. Like it's just, there's no coming back from that. Especially if it's Persona Red turn or you're restanding, no way. So, I know Festival Collection is out. You have the 2 new over triggers, but let's be honest, we're playing a Brant Gate deck. you're never not going to play this. This is just too good. So that is that. And that's the deck. I like the deck a lot. It's a lot of fun to play. It's got some strategy with it, no pun intended, with the strategy orders, which ones to play when, making sure you have them. You're recurring them with the Elder Dragon. You've got Habitable Zone, setting up extra orders, letting your Grade 2s boost. It's a lot of fun because I like the Aggression Restanding Vanguard decks. I have Minerva too. Just a lot of fun. I enjoy playing it, and I'm looking forward certainly to the set 13 support, and we'll be talking about that a lot more then. But thanks for watching. Keep an eye out for more deck profiles and matches from us, and you'll be seeing us soon. Thanks.